Welcome to episode 8 of Sullivan Street, where we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Banshee Tour and wrap up our thoughts about the Banshee Tour in general. But first, let's talk to Chris. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I've been anxiously waiting to hear about your thoughts on these shows because they haven't gone up on Nugs yet. You told me I was ready to like listen to your two shows and be able to talk about the what's been going on, but I'm just gonna have to trust you. Um,
Yes, and
this
it
is
is.
a building block in our relationship.
And thank you. And it is, you're right. Trust is a big thing, and I'll probably break it every so often, but mostly I'll be okay. And it is funny. I guess the Troubadour show was like this as well, but I was thinking like this is the first time, and I didn't take notes during the shows, but this is the first time, and almost like rationalizing why I had to see him twice on the same tour. Like, oh, it's for journalistic purposes. Now that I have the podcast, I have to keep up to date with these things, turn it into a full time job. So officially, I didn't count how many they've had, but the right now is the eve of the Berkeley show. I guess maybe not the eve, but they're playing the Berkeley show tonight, which I guess we've called, right. That's supposed to be their hometown show. Usually, we'd
Essentially, right?
say.
I mean, Berkeley is the sort of the starting point, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Supposedly that's like one of their special shows. I don't think they really changed the set list that much for the Berkeley show ever. I do think, from what I've heard, they try to put a little extra effort into their shows there. And I would like to see, I actually said to somebody yesterday, I have two friends up near there, and one who I actually have, I don't want to say turned into a crow's head, but I took him to a show a couple years ago, and he was really impressed how good they were live, and is actually going to see them tonight, partly because of that. But yeah, maybe next time I would see them there, but not this sort. But after today, they have, I guess, officially 8 shows left. So we are going to use this as the kind of our thoughts about the tour in general. Yeah, please. You were going to
Yeah,
say
we're getting
something.
towards the end. Although they have at times, sometimes it's like those last three shows where they're like, we're busting something out. So, and this
Yes.
has definitely been a summer of them kind of going back into the catalog a bit and finding some things they hadn't been playing and or hadn't been playing a lot. I was sometimes surprised I'd see something pop up on a set list and you go back to last year and it's like, actually, they did play that two times last year.
Mm.
You just sort of kind of forgotten it, but they have been, I feel like, getting more into the rest of their catalog than they were over the course of the summer, right?
Yes.
They've been
Yes.
kind of slowly dipping in.
And I have some stats about that, which
Ooh,
we'll get
okay.
into after I talk about my shows. And the one thing I was going to say, because we kind of hinted about this when the Banshee tour kicked off, but if they've done 59 shows this year, and what did I say? There's 8 more to go, or something like
Mhm.
that. So when they're into the 60s. This would mean that it is the most that they've toured since 2015.
Okay.
In 2015, they did a little over 80 shows, which
Oh, wow.
itself was the largest amount they've done since 2008. So this has been a major show. I mean, a major tour for them.
Yeah, and well, it's a little bit the and if you think about it, you combine it. If you think about the calendar year, right? If not just a rolling year. Last fall, they went to Europe, right? So if
Right.
you combine this year up to September plus all the stuff they did in the fall last year, maybe comes probably close to 80 shows. And I
No,
guess
that
it sort of makes sense because this is finally it took them kind of a while to do the Butter Miracle tour. 2015 is really the Somewhere Under Wonderland tour, right? That
yes,
album got released in the fall,
yep,
um, and then 2008 is the Saturday Nights and Sunday Mornings tour,
exactly.
essentially. So it's interesting though that this is they finally gotten to that point. Although of course, as they got towards the end of this tour in the US, they stopped playing the suite basically altogether. And so it's the not quite the Butter Miracle
Yeah,
tour anymore. Although I guess kind of the US got the Butter Miracle tour in 21 and 22. It's a little
that's
bit,
right.
you know,
Right,
it's
because
been a little
right,
bit
officially
haphazard
when I
because of that.
saw them in 2021, they called it the Butter Miracle Tour.
Right.
An interesting fun fact for Crow's Heads: the and this I guess would have tied to Recovering the Satellites and maybe the height of their popularity. Um, that according to Setlist, the most they've ever toured in one year, 1997, almost 140 shows.
That's a lot of
That's
shows.
a lot of shows. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a little fun
And
fact
that
for
makes
you.
sense because they basically toured Europe multiple times. They toured. They did a giant two U.S. tours, right? They did a spring tour and a giant summer tour, and of course they did the stuff in the fall with the 10 spot and all that stuff. So it's interesting. Makes sense though, I guess, that was the peak, and also probably I guess probably the peak of their popularity as a live band.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
so
So I got to see them twice in Los Angeles, and we're going to call this episode Los Angeles or the LA Metro. So I'm not counting San Diego in there, even though that's part of quote SoCal.
yeah.
So at first I saw them in Highland, which is pretty funny, and even well, I'll get into that later. So Highland, so there's a casino in Highland. So part of this will be that they played a casino show here, and of
Mm.
course they played a casino show in Vegas as well. Officially, I think it's in San Bernardino. Now it says Highland because San Bernardino has a rough and tumble, um, uh, reputation, and so I think that's kind of Highland is officially like kind of a neighborhood or almost a yeah. I don't even know how to describe it because it's not really a suburb of San Bernardino. So casino there from the San Manuel tribe, and they've renamed it Yamava for those that don't know. And as I told somebody
Oh.
else, they actually own and recently bought the Palms
Oh.
Casino in Las Vegas, which is why they played at the Palms Casino in Las Vegas a couple days later. So, and somebody told
That's
me
interesting.
because Yamava. So the one interesting thing about both my shows and the other one I saw was the YouTube Theater is that both of these venues are considered theaters, and they were both built in the last 3 years.
Oh,
Um,
all the brand new
Yes, the YouTube
theaters.
Theater in Inglewood. So that's kind of it's not connected physically, but it like is 20 steps away basically from the SoFi Stadium where the Rams and the Chargers play. There's a little courtyard separating them. They're in the same
Gotcha.
they're in the same complex. So
So
that
that's
was built
technically not even Los Angeles either. That's Inglewood.
Inglewood, exactly. So and they even say that there. So yeah, then at least that one because the Highland is
Yeah.
a little debatable about whether that's real address there or not.
I'm
But
always
but
confused if places outside of Los Angeles are also good places to find yourself a taco. Because I've
Well,
been told
that's
Los
true.
Angeles is a really good place to
Well,
find yourself a
San
taco.
Bernardino would be right. So San Bernardino does not have a great reputation, but it has one of the best reputations for Mexican food. And in
Oh,
fact, if you and it's not in the best neighborhood, but there is a restaurant in San Bernardino. So I think Taco Bell originally started in San Bernardino,
oh,
the chain. And so, not only that, but supposedly the urban legend is, and actually you can see this. This was featured in CBS Sunday mornings. That the restaurant they stole it from, the idea of the hard shell taco, was also from San Bernardino, and that restaurant is still in business. I think it's the Mitla Cafe. You can look it up.
oh, interesting. So you could
So
go to
yeah,
the actual originator of the hard shell taco.
exactly. That
That's
Taco
a good
Bell
time.
now took advantage of. So yeah, so they played, and one thing I did hear it, but you have maybe a little more thoughts because you've seen them before. The one interesting thing about this show and a couple of the others, but very few, is that Dashboard Confessional did not join them. Now
Hmm.
I think it was partly because of break, but I also think it might have had something to do with the venue.
Well,
Um,
and maybe with the theater, the deal they were cutting with the
yes,
theater in term a well, I always say two things with theaters that can make them different, right? Is with casinos. One, again, the deal that's getting cut has I assume has to be sort of different than the deal that an amphitheater would cut, just generally. But then also, I would think that casinos like their shows shorter. And
Mm,
my assumption would be that Frank Turner was taking a set. I don't know how long he played for, but I assume he was taking a much shorter set than Dashboard. And it may not have just been efficient to be like, well, we're going to get Dashboard here and have him play 30 minutes. That's not going to make everyone happy. Or the Crows are not going to have to play a headlining set. And so the
yeah,
deal
I
might have
think
just
he
been they
did
went their separate
play.
ways for a week or something.
I think he did play a little shorter, actually, and the Crows themselves played a couple songs shorter than they have been.
Hmm.
18 that show as opposed to 20 or 21. Not much. And someone said it's funny because now that so yeah, so as I said, the YouTube theater in Inglewood has only been about 3 years old. Um, and then this theater, the Yamava Theater, in fact, it even got featured in some LA articles because it was even newer. I think it's only officially 1 year old or one
Oh,
and a
wow.
half. So the
Was it
acoustics are
nice?
supposed to be. Oh, the theater itself is very nice, and the acoustics are just like YouTube are. I'm told state of the art. And somebody told me outside the show, which I kind of guessed anyway. If you looked at the Yamavas, like who's been playing there recently, well, first of all, it looks like the best of for anybody that grew up in the '90s. Like Dave Matthews was playing there, Smashing Pumpkins. There's a couple. I just some of the names are escaping me, but in the late summer, it was like a greatest hit. And someone told me because I was like, geez, only 3,000. The YouTube theater is 6,000, so this venue is 3,000. Somebody said, oh, they're paying big time money to these artists to show up, so they're not
Hmm.
making the money off the ticket prices.
They're trying
So
to get
anyway,
well, that's the other casino thing, right? They're trying to get people in who have names so that people will come gamble.
yeah, gamble before and after. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I ate dinner there, so I get it. They made money that way. So you said, what are your thoughts on Frank Turner? He's interesting. I didn't know a lot about him. He's British. He said he flew in just the night. Like he's like, I just flew in 10 hours ago from the UK. And you said you've seen him a couple times.
Yeah, if you so he's I feel like connected to sort of the New Jersey punk scene for whatever reason, just relationships and stuff like that. So I saw him at a festival, geez, 10 years ago, in basically a parking lot in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I've also seen him open for Counting Crows in New York a couple of years ago on the first leg of the Butter Miracle tour. And he's good. I like him. He's not someone I'm a big fan of or a go to. I have some friends who really are very big Frank Turner fans, and I get it and appreciate it. I enjoy him. Um, my favorite poster artist, Jeff Everett Rockers of Red, has done some really cool stuff for him too.
Oh, okay.
So I get it with him, and I'm not a I'm a fan, but not a he's in the middle of my list of Counting Crows um, supporters,
Okay.
support acts.
I mean, one thing I love is, and this actually came up with Dashboard Confessional. Even though, of course, I want everybody to be a diehard Crows fan, I also like really appreciate and love when there's random fans that basically came there for Frank Turner.
Yeah,
Or for Dashboard, I always get a kick out of that too. In fact, the well, it wasn't a couple; it was two cousins next to me,
mm.
and one was a Crows fan, and one was a Frank Turner fan. So that's why they decided to go to the show together. Um, we'll talk about it later, but casino. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts. That's my first true casino show. I did go to one, the House of Blues in New Jersey, but even though it was at a casino, it was not a casino show. It was general admission. It was all younger people. And it was different generation. This a lot of the people near me where they're like, oh, I won the tickets. I was comped the tickets. My work gave me tickets. Um, and we'll talk about this. The Crow sounded great. And I even wrote you about it. I think sometimes they can ignore the crowd. It's not that crowd was bad, and the crowd wasn't. Some American crowds. We've talked about this. People are just drunk or talking to themselves the whole
Right.
time, and that aggravates me. They're not even listening. I had one or two songs that came up in the LA show, but this one, no, the crowd was very polite. They just did not really know the Crows that well.
Yeah.
They did know their major songs, and in fact, because of that, what got one of the biggest audiences approval was when they started playing Big Yellow Taxi, right? Because people know that song.
Right. Yeah, the hits. Well, that's the thing. You get that casino crowd that's very yeah, they're probably there for the hits on the whole.
Yep.
A lot of people got comp tickets. The energy level tends to be a little lower. And I tend to avoid casino shows for that reason unless it's something where it's going to be general admission in the front, like the Borgata in Atlantic City does a similar thing where it's like it's general admission in the front and the seats are
Oh,
sort of
right.
behind it. And so
Yes.
if you're comping people's seats, at least they're not the people in the front row,
Yes.
as opposed to the highest roller gets the front row seat and they're just sort of sitting there for and not having a good time.
I
You know?
just love those venues. I want more of those, and that's what I said they had in the UK, and what I miss. And actually, it kind of came up in the LA because some of the fans wanted to treat that, even though it was seats, as a general admission where you could stand up. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
That not general admission, but that they wanted to stand the whole time. A
Sure.
lot of
Yeah.
them, but of course, there's 20% of the people that are like, "Hey, I paid $500 for these seats. Like, sit down in front of me." Right? You get that whole thing. Where I like, yeah, when I was in the UK, a lot of the venues was, as you said, a pit kind of in the front for those that want to do that, and then the seats in the back. So, um,
Yeah. And the
y-
Crows are kind of a weird fight with that, and that the energy is I generally prefer to stand for a Counting Crow show,
yes,
but
me too.
I also get that it's not necessarily music you need to be up and dancing to, or
Right.
certain songs, especially, you don't really need to be up for. So there's kind of that weird tension. I think it's true of a lot of bands like this, that sort of mid tempo Americana rock band, that it makes sense to stand for, but is also not it's not weird to me that people are like, I'm just going to sit down and
Oh
enjoy
no.
this. So but it's hard in the seated venues for that reason, right? Where there's that tension between if one
Yep.
person stands up and you're like, well, I want to sit down. I I don't know. It's the endless fight,
Oh,
right?
I
It's the
know.
tale as old as time. There's the person that's like, no, I paid for this ticket and I get to stand up, and the other person being like, I paid for this ticket and I get to sit down, and it's like maybe we could all just agree on sections or
Yeah,
something to reach
exactly.
a
I
debate, or I don't know.
exactly, and I've even seen that at sports games, like when I went to yeah, some when I went to college and stuff. That no, I agree, and I
Well, the
would definitely
Europeans
pay
have that with
extra.
soccer, right? The Europeans kind of have the like, here's the section for
Yes.
the yelling people. Here's the section for the people that just want to sit and enjoy the game. Someone explained to me the first time I bought tickets to soccer in Italy, where they were like, "Oh, you want what section do you want? What do you want to do?" And they were like, "This one's for this." I was like, "Oh, interesting. I think I'm going to do this. I think that's what I'm going to do." But
But you're right.
concerts should have that. I think concerts should have that.
Yeah, and you're right. Like time and time again, you don't have to stand up. But right for me, it's a religious experience going to the Crow Show, so I do want to stand up for time and time again. But I also have this kind of guilt. I don't know. It's not Catholic guilt, but I don't like blocking the people in back of me, or behind me. So I tend not to stand up unless everybody else is. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. So yeah, the Yamava show which one thing was great, Chris, that just like the show you saw in New York, they did a tribute to us by starting it off with Sullivan Street.
They know. They know.
They know, and
They
I was
know.
I was so happy about that to hear, because that was the first time. Obviously, I've heard it since we started the podcast, and I was all in. It is one of my, and it actually, and we'll talk about that with the LA show. They started. Well, I'll even say it now. Both of these shows started with maybe my two favorite Crow opener songs, which is Sullivan Street, and then the LA show they started with Catapult, which I
Ooh,
love as
yeah.
an opener. I guess Mrs. Potter's is maybe my other one, although I've only seen that once, maybe of them opening, but that's another great opener. But both of them are like they're they're not total deep cuts, but they're not one of the hits, and I just yeah, they both of them put me in a great mood.
Yeah.
So was here at the Sullivan Street. Now it's funny. One of the things I was going to say about some of the songs is that, hey, I like this song, but I've kind of heard this enough already. I don't need to
Mhm.
hear it again. For some reason, I never seem to feel that way about which was the number two song in both shows, which I got to see Saint Robinson,
Mhm.
because I just think that song is so great live. So far I've never gotten sick of seeing Saint Robinson live, and we're going to talk about this later. For whatever reason, I've seen them play that at half the shows that I've gone to, and that is
Huh.
not a song they play that often. And it's really
No, yeah.
ironic because it is my sister's favorite song that they play, and
Mhm.
I think literally every show I've gone with my sister, with maybe four times, they played Saint Robinson
Well, hey, again,
as a tribute to
they're
her.
crowd pleasers.
Yeah.
They're crowd pleasers. I would say the one thing I will say about that song is that I really like it and I like it live. I really love there was like a 2000 like 2003, 2004 they were doing an acoustic version of that. And it'd
Oh
be
yeah.
really cool to see them bring that back at some point just cuz it's a unique take on it. I like the original. The original that they play it pretty close to the original now. I kind of I really like that acoustic version they'd worked up, and they just kind of have they abandoned it at some point a long time ago. But I'd be interested to hear them play that again. But I
And,
think,
and
yeah,
And as much as they've gone more, and we'll talk about this, to playing a lot of the greatest hits every show, boy, I got to give Gross credit to start off. That their two songs, or three of the quote unquote top two songs that I've seen, were Saint Robinson, Sullivan Street, and Catapult. So it's not like they're only playing their greatest hits. I mean, I guess you can argue Sullivan Street because it was on August. But one interesting thing about Saint Robinson is, not interesting thing. One
mm,
observation I had is that somebody was writing on one of the forums or something about, hey, Adam is not 20 years old anymore. There's certain songs that maybe he can't hit the certain notes. Maybe, he's always talked about Up All Night is, I think, difficult for him to sing live
mm,
now, and some of the other ones. So I did notice in the last couple of years, because I've seen St. Robinson a couple times, that when he does the final, get into my car and drive, that he's
yeah,
been singing that, I guess what would be an octave lower or whatever,
mm,
because it's really high, and which is fine. But that was and I get that, but that was always my favorite part of the song. Like that I just love the part so much. And guess what? For the Inglewood show, the LA show, he tried to he did, but I
mm.
think if I caught it correctly, he played it in the original octave.
Interesting. And I
So
think that he seems like from interviews and things like that, but it seems like again, this is where I see sometimes people go like, well, Adam doesn't sing like this anymore. And it's like, you saw one show. Listening to a lot of shows over the course of the tour or parts of them this summer, you can really hear there are nights when he's kind of in full voice and he's really got it. And there's other nights where he's either for mood reasons or just where his voice feels like he's not hitting or going jumping the same way.
And
And
I
it's
think
just going to be
he's
it's going to be different every night based on where his voice is. It's going to be it's nature of a voice, right?
yeah.
It's not the same every time.
And I think he tries to one thing I've read about them is that he tries to protect his voice now so he
Right.
doesn't mess up the whole tour. And my impression, and we'll get this to about the LA show, the Inglewood show, is that he tried to hit more high. Like, I think he took that show very seriously. You know,
Mm.
he was spent time in LA. I think he let it all go. There were certain songs that I thought and I don't think that his mood necessarily was better. I just think for either the audience or he had friends there or he just thought, hey, this is a big show. And I expected to Berkeley today that he's like, I'm going to try to hit maybe some of the notes that maybe I wouldn't try at a quote unquote regular show.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
that pass also you might get again. Just he talk to the New York show that I was at about having lots of friends there. So you get that kind of adrenaline of just sort
yes.
of having performing for your friends, and it's a little bit different. I was at a place show this recently that it was played on for my wife's birthday essentially, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm in good voice today, and I feel like it's a friends and family show. We're going for some stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, I believe you. I trust you. I think you always sound good, but you telling me it's better.
No, that's
Um,
great. And then, so both shows, then the third and fourth cuts were Mr. Jones, which is that's a fine place to play Mr. Jones. You got to play at number three, you get the crowd going after two deeper cuts. And then Colorblind is a song I like. Colorblind, is it my favorite song off Desert? Like, no. I That's maybe the one song on the set list I don't really need to see for a while. I've seen it a lot. Um, and I don't, I do understand it's kind of a crowd favorite because of Cruel Intentions. I do laugh. One thing I was thinking is like, one thing I love about the Crows, for Colorblind, they bring the xylophone out, right? And I
mhm.
think that's the only song that they
Yeah,
use the xylophone. I just love that they're like, we're keeping right, because they could probably recreate that song on Charlie's keyboard. I mean,
sure.
that sound, right? They don't need to have a xylophone. It's almost like when they play was it Washington Square when when Jim plays it on the books,
Oh,
right?
Michelangelo.
Michelangelo, sorry. That when he plays his hands on the book, that they always bring the book, right? They could either omit that or recreate the sound a different way or something like
Well,
that.
Washington Square, there's that one big drum that they
Oh,
use
right.
for that. It's
Yes,
just
yes,
Jim's just
yes.
playing,
Yes.
and I'm doing this. It's an audio medium, so you can't see what I'm doing, but he's just banging away on the one large drum that they only use, as best I can tell, for Washington Square.
No, you're right. And bringing the xylophone, right, takes more room than I don't know when Dave Bryson plays his little what does he play on the big yellow
Shakers,
taxi? The
maracas.
shakers, the maracas, exactly. So then you get another. I've said this in the Troubadour, I think, review as well. I actually love that they brought Butterfly in reverse, and fine, the harmonies are good, and Adam loves singing it, so God bless him. I don't need to see it again, only because I think it's taking a spot from something else. It doesn't. But I actually heard one interesting thing about Butterfly is I heard somebody behind me who was not a Crows fan, I think at the Yamava show, actually say, "Whoa!" They're like, "Whoa, that was great!" Like they were impressed by this song they never heard and the way it sounded live.
I see. Here's my pitch would be a rotating slot of the weird deep pop songs from Hard Candy, and I'll
Right.
talk about. Well, we have a
Yeah.
segment plan later.
Right.
Hint, but I'll talk about it there. But I think there's a lot of ones like that are super unique from that, and I think
Yep.
it's cool they've started to play Butterfly in reverse again. But yeah, to have it the same time every night, you know,
Yep.
it is what it is in that regard.
Yeah, it doesn't need. So then we got Omaha, which is a crowd favorite. Now, as I said, when I wrote you on the Yamava show, the casino show, I said, well, that was the example because it didn't seem like anybody. That's not true, not anybody. Very low percentage of people in the audience knew Omaha when he tries to get them to sing the Omaha part.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Oh, slightly more did it at the Inglewood show. So then in Inglewood, he threw both of them then. So they're a very similar set list. So both of
Mm.
them, number seven was Richard Manuel.
Did he
Now
talk about Robbie Robertson before either of
he
those?
not in the first one, but he did it in the second one. So please talk about that if you heard that.
Yeah, there was one, and he'd done it. There was, I think, the longest time he spoke about it was right after Robbie Robertson had died. But Robbie Robertson of the band, who was influential in their early career, and it was interesting, kind of a dot connecting sort of thing. Obviously, Adam, a big fan of the band, talked about that, but talking about how Robbie Robertson was the one that gave them the advice. Someone had sort of hooked them up for something, and when they were starting out, and gave them the advice about recording in a house, because the band had famously recorded a lot of their classic records in a house called Big Pink, hence the title of the one of their biggest record, Music from Big Pink. Um, and also that it was Robbie Robertson who was the musical director for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, where before they even had the record out, they came out and did Caravan because Van Morrison hadn't been willing to show up for his Hall of Fame induction, but that was that connection too. And that basically, Robbie was kind of like an early supporter and a champion and a little bit of a mentor. And, Richard Manuel was Robbie's bandmate in the band.
Right.
It's always hard to talk about the band
And
sometimes, because when you
the
talk about a
band,
band,
right.
the band, but he was the keyboard player. And so obviously Richard Manuel is dead. It's about the morning that Adam finds out that Richard Manuel has died. And so sort of an appropriate song to sing in honor of Robbie Robertson, and talk about that. And it does seem like they've been putting that song in the set list a lot. I think because of that they've been sort of feeling that,
Yes.
and it's been sort of a,
Yes.
a little bit of a tribute, and they've just been on the kick of playing that song.
And it's always been one of those songs. I guess I'll put St. Robinson in that group that they like playing it live, even though it never. Oh no, you know what? I won't put St. Robinson in his group because in theory, Richard Manuel was a single, right? We forgot about that. They are actually as a video
Kind of,
for
but
it.
it's
It's a
kind of not
pseudo
really. It was
single.
not a big single, certainly.
No,
It's
not at
not something
all.
that,
No,
yeah.
no. So,
Um,
but I was like, but they always like playing that one live. That's. I'm glad you did a really. I was actually going to mention. I couldn't remember his name, the rock, but you did a much better job summarizing their tribute for that. It's funny. One of the. And I didn't get her name. She didn't write me yet, but we'll talk about it later. I met a couple fans at both shows, a couple more in the LA show that are hardcore fans and might even want to. And actually, a few expressed interest in joining us on the podcast one day. But one of them I talked to, she was kind of, I guess, near the bar area, but the one thing that made me laugh is she was wearing a shirt for the band,
mm,
and I said, if Adam sees that, he's gonna love it because I said that's one of his favorite bands, right? I know he loves Big Star and the band as that when he mentioned some of his favorite bands of all time.
yeah,
Uh,
and I love that song. I think, again, it's a song they've never deviated too much from the original arrangement live, but I do really like that song, and I think it is kind of an interesting meditation song, right? I mean, that song is about, it's kind of about Richard Manuel dying, but it's really about the fleetingness of lots of things. And he's talked
yes,
about this, but just that interesting sense. And it's also always interesting to me because it's a song that was written in, 2001 or so, 2001, something like that. But it's about 15 years before that, because Richard
yes,
Manuel passed away in the mid 80s. And so
right.
it's one of those interesting things when people talk about, if you're not going through something today, if you're in a happy place, how could you write a song that's deep and meaningful? And it's like, well, sometimes the answer is you think about something that happened 15 years ago and it strikes you as important, and you write about that, you know?
Yeah, and it's the best that it's the version that they played on this tour was the best I've heard. Right, I think there's a couple little things they cleaned up or whatever. It
Mm,
just sounded great, and there's a little showman. I mean, one thing, of course, if you see the Crows all the time, which totally makes sense. There's certain things they're going to do. I don't know. Omaha's a good example, right? Omaha, he always goes to one side of the stage, and then he goes to the other side of the stage, and he goes to the middle.
yeah.
So Richard Manuel, there's a couple parts that they kind of have it all set up now, and there's even one part that he always hugs Dan near
Mm,
the end,
yeah.
and he's like, some morning's coming down or whatever, but it's always a nice, and they're singing together while they're kind of hugging there, and no, great. Yeah, is it my favorite song? No, but it was like you said, it was very good version both times, and I enjoyed it. Then in both of well, in Inglewood, they added an extra one. They added Anna Begins, which, as I said before, I love the quote unquote concert version of Anna Begins, which some people don't like, but I love it. I that
I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't really get sick of Anna Begins. It sounds great. Yeah, it's a classic song. Oh, in the YouTube version, though, the YouTube theater, he did say, oh, so he messed up one of the, and I caught it. So he messed up a lyric in the beginning, and I was like, Jesus, he realized that? And then he didn't. What he did was he skipped a lyric. So he started singing. He said something, and then he said it again, and he caught himself that he said it again. And he's like, ah, shit. Like, so he and the place like laughed. And then he got out his little lyric book that he always keeps on stage
Mhm.
that he said he never really uses anyway. Like, he actually has all the lyrics in a book on
Right.
stage. And he said, geez, I never really use it because it's not in a convenient place. What am I going to read it actually? So he looked at it for like 1 second and flipped. And then he goes, I did this in Vegas too, at the same part. And then he kind of hinted something. Now I don't know if it's because he messed up the lyric 2 times in a week, or because of other reasons, or maybe people complain that they like the old version of Anna Begins or whatever. But he was like, "This goddamn song, it's always a pain in the ass" or something like, and he was kind of laughing about it. But then he redid it from the beginning, and yeah, it was perfect. But I thought that was a funny little moment.
Well, one you didn't get at either show "Accidentally in Love," right? Which they've
No, I
played
did not.
a few times this summer. But the interesting thing, listening to the versions as they went on Nugs, was that it was an increasing journey for Adam to finally actually get the lyrics all the way correct. He
Oh,
seemed to have the verses sort of done, but then they would go into that bridge part, like "Come on, the world is turning," like. Or getting the order of those right, it seemed just completely escaped him, and you could hear each time when he screwed it up, he's like, "Oh, not it!" like,
that's funny.
and he
So
at
I
one point, I think he actually says, "Like, I wrote this song. I'm the one who wrote it, so it's my fault that there's too many words
right.
going too fast. Why does it work like this? It's I only have myself to blame for my inability to actually pull this together." Although I think the most recent version I heard, I do believe he got all of the words in the right order at the right pacing. So it's taken them some time, but I think that's a great song, and they should play that one more. So
Yeah, you're right. It's almost something got me thinking that the speed of lyrics. Now, I could be totally wrong about this, but "Accidentally in Love" and the other one that comes to mind, not as quick, was the "Earthquake Driver."
hmm,
That they have that kind of quick, and you have to know all the like they can't be easy to sing, not because of the range of the notes, but because of the speed of the lyrics and that they come up. So, yeah, okay.
yeah.
So then both of them played kind of in the next spot. They both played Children in Bloom, which deep cut they brought back. I think it sounds great. Is Children in Bloom one of my favorite songs? No, but I do like it a lot, and it's one of those songs that, as everybody kind of a hardcore fan knows, that maybe the first time you heard Recovering, you're like, kind of, what is this? Is this a Crow song? And then it
Mhm.
kind of grows, and then you realize it's kind of genius. And they added a couple. First of all, they give the
Carpet
band.
Crawlers.
What did you say?
Carpet Crawlers, the Genesis
Okay.
song.
Okay.
That's a
Yep.
Genesis song. That's it. There, he's singing a snippet, and I really like that. He's singing a
Okay.
snippet of the Genesis song "Carpet Crawlers."
Okay. I didn't catch
Um,
that.
Carpet Crawlers. Can't think of the next, but like you got to get in to get out. Which something about that
Oh yeah.
is again, that's one of those where I'm like, I can't exactly explain the connection to Children in Bloom, but the first time I heard him do it, I'm like, that's perfect.
Right.
That really accentuates the song in a way that I'm again struggling to articulate, but something about the feeling of that. Um, it's I guess they're both about that feeling of trying to get somewhere of emotionally, I guess, trying to move, get yourself somewhere. And that's sort of a connective tissue of those two songs. But yeah, I would have never thought about that song going there, but I think it sounds great.
Oh, it sounds great, and I guess it's almost like the Crows version of a jam song too,
Mm,
right? That they all
right.
get their, like, chance to kinda jam out a little bit, if you will, and even seeing, Dave adding his, great portion, and you could just tell they like playing it, all of the band members, and then it gives him a break near the end, Adam. He gets to sit down
Yeah.
while they jam out. There was something else. Oh, one thing, especially in the first half of the song, um, again, I'd have to record and take notes, but Charlie's there's more keyboard added, and
Mm.
it really adds to the, I guess I want to say, richness of the song. And I can never get enough of Charlie, but he adds some little sound effects, and I don't say sound effect, but yeah, keyboard parts in the first half of the song, and maybe even a little in the second half. I'd have to hear it, but after listening to it twice, I caught it. So anyway, I
Interesting,
love
because
it.
it
I
did sound like a slightly different, or like an
Yes,
augmented arrangement from
yes,
prior versions. And I like again,
exactly.
I think I like better. I think it and maybe you're right, it is the keyboard because it's such a guitar song. So
Yep.
to add a little bit more on the keys that sticks out, kind of diversifies the sounds of the song a little bit.
I mean,
And I like it.
some non-fans like it because if they're rock fans,
Right.
that's the one song that when Emmy kind of and Dan go a little nuts on the guitar, they like that portion. But boy, talk about, and again, we'll talk both good and bad about their set list, but talk about a deep cut. Children in Bloom is almost the definition of a deep cut, right?
Yeah.
Except, that it was their second, I guess, second best-selling album, but still, that is a deep cut. That's not the kind of song that most bands are going to play like at this point of their career.
Yeah,
Then in
not played
the
at all. Not played at all in 2022, and played. Well, no, they hadn't played it since 2015 at that point. So,
Okay,
and they played it. They played it 10 times now this summer. But
I love it.
yeah, and again, it's another song where again, it's been 8 years. It hasn't been 20 years or whatever. But that one hadn't been in the list at all, and so good to see that one kind of become part of the sort of common core of songs. Although that is part of the thing I would just note, it's been kind of interesting to watch the progression of the tour because things would pop out and then they would at some point, a couple of them, one that I know is coming up on your set list here, have become kind of regular
Yes.
where they weren't getting played at all, but now again you saw them twice in a week and you saw Children
Yes.
in Bloom twice.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's sometimes it's a shifting as opposed to the set list changing wholesale every night.
That's right. So then, although one he announced it a little later, then you get to the point of the program that you get the acoustic, let's just say 3 songs for the even though it's not true acoustic for the YouTube Theater one. Black and Blue started.
Hmm.
I was fine to hear Black and Blue. That was one that the crowd a little bit around me started talking and not listening to as much. Yeah, so maybe the crowd didn't care, except for some fans. There's certainly some fans loved hearing it, the ones that really knew the Crows. And then in YouTube theater, they played Blues Run the Game, which I've seen before a couple times, so I didn't need to see it. But I will say, absolutely no doubt, that was the best version of it I ever heard. Um,
Hmm.
he sang it. That was the best I ever heard Adam sing it, and it was the best I ever heard Emmy play it. Like Emmy did this where he added extra things, but it
Hmm.
wasn't too gratuitous. Like you could even argue that sometimes Emmy, maybe even going back to the Children in Bloom, maybe he's a little excessive or just doing it for the whatever this that. But he added these things to Blues Run the Game, at least in my opinion, compared to like the studio version and even what I remember seeing live.
Hmm.
I thought, yeah, I thought that was fantastic. When I first started, I'm like, oh, I've heard this a lot, but after the end of it, I was like, whoa, that was amazing. And then going to then we'll talk about one song they shared. Now going to the Yamava, as you texted me, well, Eric, you were happy to see this. They played the Ballad of El Goodo
Yeah.
from Big Star,
That's
and
such a great song.
not only is it a great song, but it sounded perfect. They sounded so good in the harmony. I was like, I cannot believe that they're not talked about for having like. Is there any other band like that sings harmonies as good as them in the last? Especially post the '70s. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, they certainly should be in that best of conversation. I think, in terms of harmony singing bands, they do sound great, and I love that song. I think
Oh,
he
I love it.
kills it, and um, it's also just a perfect. There are certain songs that are just perfect, not written by Adam, but perfect Counting Crow songs,
Yes, and
and I
that.
think that's one of them.
Thank you. That was exactly. There's a couple songs from Underwater Sunshine that are just perfect kind of Crow song, even if they didn't write that.
Yeah,
So
it's probably my
speaking.
second or third favorite Big Star song.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
number one is What's Going On. And I don't know if they would kill that as well as they kill El Goodo. So fair to the Crows for, but man, that's so good. I'm a big, I really love Big Star. I think again, large part because Adam Duritz told me many times how good Big Star was, and it finally got me to go buy those. The it's really the first 2 records that they used to come on like a CD together. You could just so
Okay.
it's okay. Well, I get 2 records in one. That's a good deal. And I listened to that until finally I was like, oh, this is this is pretty great.
No, that's
um,
great. And then talk about in at Yamava, and again, this is when the crowd wasn't that into it. And think about speaking of harmonies, back to back, the Ballad of El Gudo, followed by Angels of the Silences, and the
well, if the
harmony to
crowd
end
wasn't
that
into
one.
that, then I'm ready to fight this
Yeah,
crowd.
no, they liked it. I'm just saying that some of them maybe didn't know what it was, and then after they listened to it, they're like, "Oh, that was pretty good."
Yeah.
So I talked to you about this on email before. You know, when I heard they brought back Angels of the Silences acoustic, I know hardcore fans love this. Of course, I love that album. But there was even a part of me that said, well, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not too excited. And also, like, I'd rather hear Angels of the Silences electric. And even though that might be still true, I absolutely loved seeing this. 10 out of 10, a highlight of the show. It sounded so good. And when I saw all four, I guess it would be the four of them, right? When I saw like in the front, like Dan, and then Adam, Emmy, and then Charlie's there with the accordion, and then Dave, and they're all doing the harmony, and it sounded so good. I actually that was the maybe the one part of the show both times that I almost got chills. I just thought it was that good.
Yeah, it is interesting because they had played that song a couple of times last year, so it's not a total bust out in that regard. But certainly they played it. They've played it according to Setlist.fm 22 times this summer,
Okay.
which I will say that is one. Again, I think I told you I listened to at least some of every show, but I'll skip things. Right? I mean, again, if I've heard it a few too many times recently, I'm not afraid to go. Okay, I'll check out the next thing. I do not skip Angels of the Silences this summer. It is so good. The arrangement is very similar to the original, but again, they've tweaked it just a little bit in a way that I think sounds great,
Yep.
and they are killing that song. I've been really happy to hear them kind of go back to that. It does make me wonder. There's been a little bit of rumor swirling about a Recovering the Satellites like reissue thing.
Hmm.
It is interesting to me that as those conversations have happened, they've rediscovered Angels of the Silences, they've rediscovered Children in Bloom. You know,
Yeah, you never know.
is there a chance we're gonna get like a whole album concert at some point to punctuate it, like when they did August?
Yeah.
I'd certainly be into that.
Oh yeah, I would love to hear that as well. So no, I agree with you. 10 out of 10. So we're
Yeah,
we're we're, we're
I'm
on
with
the
yeah. It's
same.
been great. Yeah, that's been again. I think that's my like. If I had to pick like a song of the summer from the band, I think it's that. I think
Yes.
them bringing that back and playing it so consistently so well, I've been like, yeah, you
Yeah.
guys
No.
just keep playing that. Don't worry about it. I don't care if it's the same every. Just keep going.
No, I think you're right. I think that would be the one, and then maybe the number two would be Children in Bloom, and then one other that's going to come up in a second. Well, I guess
Yeah,
two others that are going to come up in a second. And yeah, we already talked about this. And Yamava, they played the Big Yellow Taxi. Then we get into the round here in Palisades Park. Palisades Park is a song that I definitely have. More appreciation to, and I one thing I appreciate about Palisades Park is that, and I know it was a complicated song to write. Adam is so proud of the song and loves singing it that I do get into it partly because of that as well. Plus, I
yeah.
like the changing of so that is a song now that maybe not the first time, but the second time I heard it live, I was like, yeah, it's kind of a longer song. I'd have other songs that I put up there. Now I really am appreciating hearing it, and I thought he sounded great singing it both times. So
Yeah.
one thought that was funny is that there was one woman at the YouTube theater in the front middle who, when like the first time the tempo kicks in, that she went nuts. It's like you could tell that was absolutely her favorite song. Like, she was so crazy about it, and she was next to her whatever partner, boyfriend, husband, or something. I don't know how old she was. I want to say late 50s or something, maybe even early 60s. But I just loved it. Like, you could tell that was her favorite song, and to hear it live, and when it started to get, and I was almost getting pumped up for her. So, um,
Did you get any alt of the Alton round here in the middle?
yeah, what's funny about me is sometimes I don't even catch it, or I think, oh, this is an alt I've heard before. Um, so I'm not sure. I know that he played an alt both times. I just can't
Starting with like,
remember.
what are you waiting for?
Yeah, yeah,
Summer's gone.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah, and I've liked that. I think they've gone back. There are some, the round tier versions were coming down to like 6.5 minutes at the beginning of the tour, and now they're back up to 8 because they've got that middle part. And I think it's a good. And we're planning to do a little more on round here alts maybe in the next episode, but I think I think I don't know exactly where I'd rank it, but it does seem to me like a really good round here alt. It really fits the song,
Yeah, it
and
sounds
I've enjoyed it and seeing it evolve, hearing it evolve, and
that's great. I was thinking I might, we'll all have we'll have 10 nicknames for each other, but then I was I almost wanted to call you the Alt Master
alt mass.
because
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
as one of the
it's
many.
well, and it's interesting because it's. I will say again, I listened to every show at least a little bit, and the first time they went into that, I think I was like walking to the grocery store and I was just like, "Oh shoot, there's a new one." It's
Oh, that's
my
funny.
brain. I like kind of
I love
stop and
it.
I'm like looking around to make sure like I'm cranking my phone up to hear it as well as I can on my headphones. Because I'm like, "Ooh, we got new words in the middle here. Where's he going with this one?"
Yep, and just like
But
I've
therefore
noticed a
exciting.
couple, right? And it's funny how I noticed a couple other little things from listening. I said like the little part of Blues Run the Game and Children in Bloom. I noticed a little, yeah. So that's great. So now, speaking of covers that can kind of sound like a Counting Crows song, but maybe I'm giving Counting Crows too much credit. I don't know. Which would be the big news of the last week or so
Mm,
that Adam, the new Taylor Swift fan who talked about going to see them in earlier this year, how his girlfriend loves Taylor Swift, how he appreciates her best show. He only would have gotten ticket. He only got tickets because he's famous, and he
mhm,
started covering the one and leading right into Long December. I love it. The first time I heard it, I was like, it's not. He just plays a couple notes, and well, then on the way to the concert, I listened to it 6 times, and I was like, wow, did he pick a song that fits him too?
mm,
It's not
yeah,
just a good Taylor Swift song, but but he picked the song, and almost on the dare I say the sixth time I heard it, I almost started crying a little bit, maybe. But it's because like it has those Adam themes almost some of the same themes of Possibility Days, right? Of
right,
regret, what could have been. Anna Begins too, right? It's the love that could have been his wife, but it just wasn't going to happen because he was backpacking with her, and that this particular thing had to end. So this what about this was what could have been, and going into Long December, the crowd favorite, I guess, even for non Crows fans. I think it's great, the Taylor
yeah.
Swift cover.
I like it too. I haven't. I've been waiting a little bit. I've been like listening a little bit on YouTube, but I'm like, I want the properly mastered version on like
Yes.
Nugs, and I'm like, oh, come on, guys, put one up because that's one of the other reasons they haven't put one up recently. And um, I want to hear the proper sort of mastered version of that song.
Oh,
Um,
and
yeah,
the other
and I
thing,
also always I do like as a thing when he plays something at the piano into Long December.
yes.
Those are I tend to like that. There's a lot of different things he's done over the years, but every time I'm like, it's always good when he does Goodnight L.A. or
Well, that's what I was going to say.
uh,
That was the one that always struck me as my favorite when he did Goodnight
mm,
L.A. and Too Long December. That was always my favorite. This is up there now with me, and he's only played it whatever 5 times, but I think it's great. And you know what's great too is that in this tour, and I guess it's the maximum because tell me if I'm wrong.
mm,
But I used to, we talked about like, oh, Jim brings a xylophone out for colorblind.
mm,
I used to feel that way a little bit, although I guess it's not true about Charlie, because maybe there when they weren't playing Omaha, oh, Charlie would come out and do the accordion for Long December. Now they basically play Omaha every time, but then it
yeah.
makes me think, oh, there's these old songs that they play. He doesn't play the accordion anymore because I don't think he's played on any recent album, right? That I can
I don't think so. Yeah,
remember. But now he comes out or this tour he came out 4 times because he comes out Omaha with the accordion, Long December with the accordion, Angels of the Silences with the accordion, and now he's playing the accordion on the Taylor Swift cover.
interesting.
So I was loving seeing Charlie in the front. Now I don't want him to be a full-time accordion player because I think he is literally one of the best keyboard players. Yeah, as I've said 100 times, I think he's a genius. So
I'd be curious to
uh,
ask him about like what was it like to like break down because I don't know the Taylor Swift version well enough to know if there's an accordion part in the original or not.
No, and I've been listening to the Taylor Swift version a couple times. It's pretty poppy. I mean, the lyrics are great and stuff, but I would almost argue that's not one of her best. Well, it's kind of yeah, almost not one of the best produced songs of hers, in my opinion. Even though the song itself is great.
Mm. What about
Um,
folklore? Right, which is a very it's intent not less produced, but it's
right,
like
right.
produced differently, right? It's produced by Aaron Dessner from the National. So it's produced it sounds like an indie folk record. Like it sounds like Taylor Swift fronting Bon Iver a little bit. And
Yep.
literally Justin Vernon's on one of those. That's my favorite song from that record is the one the two of them do together. Maybe we can get maybe Adam and Taylor do that song together. Um, if when she finds out, maybe we'll get that
Yep.
I'm never a fan of like fantasy booking duets or whatever, but that would be pretty fun. You know, I don't know. Just saying,
Yeah.
it's got there, guys. It's out there.
I I agree. I agree. And then that's about it. We got the encore, and we kind of already talked because, of course, they do hanging around in Holiday
Mhm.
Spain every encore. We already talked about in the Long Island show about them coming out with Dashboard Conventional. I love that song. It was
Yeah.
nice to see it live. And time again, they've been, although right, they did not play time and time again in your Long Island show, right? Even though
Yeah,
that's one
because
of
they ran out of time essentially. But no, but it's great. And then that still sounded great. I think they've really been killing that song this
that is
summer.
the best. That again, that's another song that 30 years into their career, that is the best, I think, the best live version of Time and Time Again that they've played ever. And it was great. It was great and a great way to kick off the encore. If you're going to have a couple of the Holiday in Spain hanging around again, I love that they added Time and Time Again to it for this tour, just to have kind of one deeper cut in there and one song that we haven't heard much in other recent tours. So,
Was hanging around better with Frank Turner or with Dashboard Confessional? Since
oh,
you saw them so close together.
gosh, part of me thinks maybe it sounded better with Frank Turner, but I do like the chaos when they
Mm,
have with Dashboard Confessional, because with Frank Turner it was just him and his not friend, but there was just two of them.
yeah,
And then Dashboard Confessional, well, there's five in the band, I think, plus the
five
no, is
or
there six if you have
six.
the
Might be six.
the
Yeah,
backup singer?
yeah.
And they're just having fun. They're just being silly. They're sitting next to each other. There's more people singing. Like if I I don't need to hear hanging around again, but if I do, I actually like it when they bring everybody out on stage. And at the end, Jim was jumping around, which he loves to do. I love Jim's energy. We'll talk about that some other time. But Jim, and I know that he used to joke it's partly because he's quote unquote the younger one, right? They always said that and when he drums, he has, I mean, I'm telling you, there's certain parts, I almost took notes about it, both in Children in Bloom, I think even Richard Mann, there's a couple songs, certainly Catapult. There are some songs that I've always been amazed by. I told you, the first time I saw
Mm.
Jim play live, I was like, that was before he recorded with them. I was like, this guy is great. He fits in the Counting Crows, and he still is. And I know he jokes once, "Oh, I'm the young guy. That's why I do things like jump around on stage and stuff." But I was like, "Yeah, but I don't know how old he is. Let's say he's 42 or something." Well, when the other band members were 42, except for Adam, they weren't jumping around on stage. So it's also part of his personality and his enthusiasm, and it's infectious, and it comes out and hanging around in
Yeah.
other songs.
Well, Adam was calling it out. One of the Oklahoma shows. Apparently, they'd shipped everything west because they were going out to the West Coast for the next run of shows, and apparently all of Jim's pants went,
Oh,
and so he had to borrow a pair of Bryson's pants. And he's apparently the only one who could borrow Bryson's pants.
oh,
But
that's
Adam
funny.
was saying, Jim, you're playing great. You may just have to keep Bryson's pants. Maybe it's
Oh,
something
that's
in the
funny.
pants. Um,
Okay, I love little stuff like that. No, I
yeah.
didn't catch that one.
No, that was one of the Oklahoma. I can't recall which one.
So
Um,
that's about the wrap. Now we're going to talk about the set list, but as far as my experience on the tour, and it's been almost an hour,
mhm.
and your experience, I don't have anything to say about my. I could mention. Well, I guess this is not a bad part to do it. I don't want to go overboard about it, but both shows. Um, I met some kind of hardcore fans, a couple of them. Maybe I'll briefly talk about some, and some of them I expect maybe to join on the show. But just kind of neat observations on the first show. As I said, there was somebody that told me about how much they were paying artists. So one thing is that there was a couple behind me that looked, I don't know, maybe mid 50s, and it's funny. They both had Crows shirts on that they just bought. So at first I
Mm,
was like, well, they don't go much, or maybe this is their first show and whatever. But then I did notice during the show that they knew some deep cuts, and then so I was like, okay, so I went up to them. Well, there were a couple from the UK who flew here
mm.
just to see. all of the West Coast shows, except ironically, not the Berkeley show tonight. I think they had to leave yesterday. So they flew in and went to like 6 or 7 shows, and they're flying back to the UK. And they actually said, I said I went to the Manchester show last year, and they said, yes, it wasn't just you. That was one of the best shows. That was the best we've ever seen around here. So that was great. And in fact, I saw them on the YouTube theater, and on that one, they actually had front row seats.
Gary?
Yeah, might have, I'm not sure. It might have been. He's bald.
I don't think he currently has hair. I know, and I don't know. Well, I just for people I
Yeah.
know from the internet. So Gary, because
Okay. Does he
more
bring his
friends with
either
Andy.
wife or partner
Yeah,
or
I
whatever?
know they were coming to the West Coast for the show.
Okay, that might have been
Uh,
it then. That might be
yeah,
it.
and
Gary.
it's
Gary
great.
sounds familiar.
And yeah, he's been a part of the online community for a very, very long time, and it's
Okay,
always so yeah, someone who's
so
participated and been involved, and it's great to know that they're still out there enjoying the shows and got to
yep, and they were
watching
laughing
a
about
week.
how much they paid for the front row. I guess I shouldn't even say, but for the front row for the YouTube theater, but they said it was worth it, and so that was great to meet them. And I said they just kind of you can kind of tell. I met another. Well, one interesting, and we'll kind of hint this is that I did see. Like I said the crowd was pretty bad at
Mhm.
Yamava, but I did notice one kind of group where it seemed to be a mother, father, and the 2 daughters, and they all seemed to know all the lyrics. So
Mhm.
I went up to them after the show and I said, "Oh," and then all of a sudden the 2 daughters, quote unquote, weren't there, and he said, "Well, ironically." No, he goes, I have daughters, but no, that those were just two yeah, he said, I have daughters the same age, like 22, but those 2 girls were just hardcore 22-year-old fans. They were not my daughters, and they just happened to be sitting next to me. But it was great to see them. And he was even trying to tell me, I didn't have time, but tell me the story. He's like, I don't think he said conceived. I think he said born, but like, my first daughter was born while Murder of One was playing or
Ooh,
something like that.
well, that's an interesting one.
That was an interesting song. And I was like, did he say conceived or born? I think he said born, but I'd have to check on that. So that was great. And then one guy at the end of the show was because he's just a concert fan, but he was telling me about it, and he said he's been seeing Crows live more in the last couple of years because he was never like a top. That wasn't like his top 10 band, but
Mm,
they're moving up the rankings because he thinks they're so good live. And so that
yeah,
was interesting. And he said and then he wanted to give a plug. He goes, for your podcast, I still think the best live band is Wilco. So he's a big Wilco fan. But anyway, so that was
I've never
interesting.
been a big Wilco, and someone will flame me in comments or something,
Yeah.
but I've never been a big Wilco guy. I mean, I liked Yankee Hotel Foxtrot just like every other person in college and like liberal arts colleges in the 2003. I don't think anyone didn't have a copy of that record, but yeah, I don't know.
So then the YouTube show and then I'll mention a couple. I met three. I told you I talked to the person who had the band T-shirt, and then I did meet 2 other people who I'll just quickly mention. But one, it was a similar thing where I just talked to the woman in the band T-shirt, and then 3 women walked by me, and you could just tell they had some people just walk in there. They had such full of energy, and it wasn't
Hmm.
drunken energy either. You could just tell they were like so excited. They were all dressed in different fashionable but not brand new Counting Crows t-shirts, right? So they had stuff from like prior tours,
Hmm.
and they all looked young, and I was almost like same thing, and they kind of saw me, and we just chatted real quick, and I was like, wow, you seem young. How did you get into the Crows? Well, it ends up 2 of them were young, not the third. The third being the mother. She gave me name Zubia. I'll even say, and she was like, "Yeah, the reason we all are hardcore fans, and I passed down the love of Crows to my young daughters, and now they're as obsessed as I am." So I might want to hear because I think that's so interesting, right? And I
Yeah.
have met some. There was one time even in a Wisconsin show, but this was 10 years ago now. But there was one college, I guess undergrad at the time, came by herself to the meet and greet. And I just said, "Whoa! I usually wouldn't expect to see a 21-year-old college girl by herself at the meet and greet." And she goes, "You know what? My father played Counting Crows in the car all the time, and then I started to fall in love with them myself." Yeah, and then I met another younger man who I'll talk to. I hope to get on the show. But by the way, the fans all started with Z. There was Zubia, right, and then Zephyr was another guy. I don't know his age. I'm gonna because we were just talking about other things. I want to say maybe late 20s, early 30s. So I don't know how he got into the Crows, but he actually paid for the sound check and everything too. Yeah, and I do want to say I'd love to hear from other Crows fans. When I saw a sound check once, Adam did not look at the people there at all. He had his back turned towards, which I actually understand. He's trying to do sound check and concentrate and doesn't want to make eye contact, and he's kind of mentally going through stuff. When Jeff joined our podcast last time, and recently he said
He
he
went
saw
again.
them twice in soundcheck, and both times he's looking at the audience, he's taking questions from the audience. Zephyr, who paid for this one, said absolutely not. He had his back turned.
Oh,
He did a
interesting.
couple songs, yeah. Yeah, and so anyway, that was that,
I
and
guess it's mood or what they're how
yeah,
intensely they're working that day. You know, some days it might just be, hey, we're just checking the sound of stuff and making sure we're okay. And other times it might be, okay, we're really trying to get this part of the song right, and we got to focus. You know,
and I kind
um,
of think if he's expecting it exactly to be a bigger show like the LA show because he has friends there and stuff, he's going to want to concentrate more on the sound check,
yeah.
maybe. So
I also wonder if it's a little bit though, being a little bit more effusive about it is maybe partially a replacement for the sound checks. Used to also have like a meet and greet aspect that I
yes,
obviously in the COVID era they still have not
yes,
brought back. So it might maybe a little bit of that. I don't know. Um, you know,
it,
I would love to know that some of the motivations on some of that stuff of what is driving people that day, or you know.
yeah, and I kind of thought Soundchecks had 4 songs. He said it was 3 songs. Now, interestingly, he said one was Catapult, which they actually started with.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, of course, the songs they play in Soundcheck, the other 2 songs, they did not, either they're practicing songs or like Start Again is one of their favorite
Like they
Soundcheck
always do.
songs.
He says that,
You have
right?
like a 50% chance of seeing Start Again, in the Soundcheck if
I
you
think
ever
it's
paid for
higher.
it. Yeah, higher, probably 75%.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I know the prices of these things have gone up. There was a lot of people there that were paying for the VIP package that gives them, like I don't know, a poster and a bag and all this stuff, but they don't get to see the sound check. So, I mean, I'm a hardcore fan. How much am I gonna pay to either get a certain level of seats or whatever? I have my limits. And this time I did not do the VIP or the sound check.
I will say just a couple other notes just on sort of the tour. Um, Another one that I really like, they only brought out once, I think, so far, unless I missed one in the last week or so. They brought back Return of the Grievous Angel, the old Graham Parsons song,
Yes.
which I've always. There are songs that are interesting because I'll find that a lot of people cover them. Like it's something connective about artists that I like also like this song. That I probably the Crows were the first I think I heard cover that song, but I've heard a lot since play that song, Whiskey Town and all the things. And so it is interesting sometimes there are songs that seem to just kind of cut across that just for whatever reason, like people who like I like all these artists, they all seem to like this. And that's one of them. And I again I'm a big fan of that song and a big again a
No,
big Graham Parsons fan. I think in part because of the influence of Adam Duritz.
No, thanks for bringing that up because I was going to segue into our final part, but I did want to. I did have the stats, and I have it for the year, so I guess that includes 1 or 2 shows. One in particular that was before their tour. I do have the songs they played, and again, even though there's like 8, 9, well, there's 9, basically half their set list they play the same every show.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, well, it seems to be kind of the same songs they rotate in and out. But if you look at all the songs they played this year, they played more than 50 different songs. Now, some of them they only played a handful of times or less, but you can't fault them for for a set list that's usually 20 and they're playing the same 9. Well, yeah, and like you said, so the fun fact is that Long December they officially did not play every show because there was some kind of intro show or something in Arizona where they only played like 6 songs or something earlier in the year, but Long December was not one of them.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, the only songs they played at every show this year were "Hanging Around Mr. Jones" and "Rain King," and of course Long December. Color. So every show in the Banshee tour, they also played besides "Hanging Around Mr. Jones" "Rain King." They played Long December every time, Colorblind, Holiday in Spain, and Omaha, and every show but one round here. So those 8 songs, and almost every show, it looks like they only skipped it like 3 times. They played Butterfly in reverse. So those are 9 songs already, and then most shows they play Time and Time Again in Miami.
40 time and time agains.
Yep.
Interestingly, which is again just a lot when you think about like, oh, they they hadn't been playing that.
Yeah, and then if you
Um,
think they're going to play Big Yellow Taxi and So Long with Dashboards there, so those are more songs that they're going to cover most shows. So anyway,
yeah.
there's a couple like you pointed out, and I got lucky with Ballad of El Gudo that you've only played twice. Um,
14 plays, interestingly, for this the whole year,
yeah,
14 plays of the suite. which
Yep.
when they've played 45 shows means it's now down to a third. And obviously a lot of that is not being played this summer for a lot of the tour.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, Big Yellow Miami, Big Yellow Taxi, Angels of the Silences, and If I Could Give All My Love, Richard Manuel are kind of the middle right after. But there's a big drop off. You go from
Yep.
40 Time and Time Again, 31 So Long, So Longs, and then it's in the 20s is just Miami, Big Yellow Taxi, Angels, and If I Could Give All My Love.
And then
Palisades and Sullivan, and after that.
yep, and then they have a couple. But it's interesting that they like, because these were two songs I really wanted to hear, that like 4 days in High Life, they only played six times, which almost kind of surprises me because you'd think that they would have had them, unless they just like, it seems like songs that they'd have to practice to get back into the rotation, and then they've
Mm,
only played it like five times, right? Because some of these songs that, like, I Wish I Was a Girl, they played it enough, I think, that they didn't need to practice. Or Good Time is definitely a song they don't need to practice. I think they know
right.
Good Time.
Well, 4 days though, I feel like it was kind of in the rotation. Let me actually look up because I have the list up. But yeah, it was kind of in the rotation for just a few weeks. That was kind of the
Yeah.
thing that it was there. They played it over the course of 2 weeks, four times, then two times in August.
Yep.
So
So there you go.
it was in rotation and playing. It dropped out of the
It
rotation
dropped
again.
out before I saw them.
Yeah, it's
So
one of the things I think right now where they're at as a band in the summers. It's I think you kind of got in some ways the best answer, which is you saw them at the beginning of the tour and then
yeah.
towards the end a couple times. I think that you're almost better off seeing them like once a month if that was possible
Mm.
than seeing them twice in a week, because over the course of a week it's kind of like, well, again, they've been really feeling that batch of songs, which means you then get a pretty similar set over the course, even though you went to see two different shows. You know,
Oh, that's right. That's right. So this got us thinking, and we don't have too much left of this episode, but this got a lot of us thinking because I don't know when I'll see them again. I've almost reached. I don't have it here. I think this was show number 19, the last one for me. So I've almost gotten to the 20. Which then, yeah, I think it was, yeah, 19. So I went and actually figured out what songs I've seen live, and I
mm.
basically knew. And it's funny if you look at my top 10, it's basically the songs that we covered. Rain King, Mr. Jones, Long December. But interestingly enough, making like cracking tied for the top 10, which St. Robinson, Hard Candy, and Richard Manuel. I've seen all those almost more than half the time. So one thing that we talked about, Chris and I, off, but I don't know his list, is we said now that you've seen them 50 plus times, right, and I've seen them almost 20. Are there up to five songs that you've never seen live that you'd love them to play? And so, Chris, let's start with you. And I'm sure some fans have heard these live, but you haven't, maybe.
Yeah, this is a little bit hard. So, and part of the issue is that again, seeing those three Wellmont shows in 2008, it's a little bit of a cheat on never seen live because they played so many different songs over the course of
That's
time.
true.
So, my number one that I'd really love to see would be Chelsea. They've only played that a few times. I would love to see them play that again if they, I don't know, as part of if they are going to possibly do Recovering the Satellites thing, if they were to bring that back, I think that'd be great. And it's a song about New York City. I can't. It's weird. In part, it's weird as someone who loves New York City as much as he does that they don't play that song.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, there's the Disney orchestra. Part of it's interesting is that there are, I don't know, maybe they played a few more times than this, but there's at least three kind of famous versions of Chelsea, at least to me. There's obviously the one at the end of Across a Wire, which is incredible. There's a version where it's used as an alt in Goodnight Elizabeth in 2002, I think. That is maybe my favorite version of Elizabeth, and I really like that song and a lot of those alts, and that's maybe my favorite. And there's also a version when they did the orchestra record, not the orchestra performances of Chelsea, which is beautiful. I would love to see them bring that back, and that's my number one by a wide margin, I think.
Did you have another one that you had on that list, or not really?
Oh,
Because
sure.
again, you
I'll give
saw
you
this.
a
Give me a
couple, and
couple. Give me two more at least.
these are a couple of deep ones, and then one I'll tell you that's it's kind of a little bit of a cheat. Um, Suffocate, which is I mean, that's a
Okay.
very deep cut, but that's from a B side, not B side, an outtake from Recovering the Satellites. That is just a really cool song. And again, they haven't played that live in 25 years. Sunday Morning LA
Yep.
from Saturday Nights and Sunday
Oh, the
Mornings.
B the Apple iTunes exclusive or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great song that I don't think they've ever played that one. Um, And here's the one that's a little bit of a cheat, but I really do mean this. I would love to see them play Holiday in Spain with Bluff one time.
Oh, okay.
I think it's
Okay.
basically a different song at that point, and I would love to see that.
I'm guessing that you've seen three. I think I know that you've seen three of the five on my list. One of them I'm not sure, and one I think well it might be impossible. Let me see. So the number one, and this is a song that they play a lot, and it's one of my favorites. And I almost thought I had seen it live, but I definitely have not. I guess my real white whale. Oh, by the way, I do have to preface that I think with the first show, I think, or one of the shows, Chris said, "What's the one song you never saw live?" And I said, "Oh, it was Solved last year because I always wanted to see 1490." What ends up, I had seen 1492 before and didn't remember, or was drunk or whatever, and I can't remember. And I was like, "Geez," until I did the spreadsheet.
It
But it
happens to
was like
sometimes.
more than 10 years.
I was looking because I was looking at the set list the last time I went to see them in LA, which is a long time ago now, like 10 years. And I was like, wait a minute, they played Mercury on those shows? I thought I only saw them play Mercury once. And I'm like, no, I'd forgotten that. And yeah, sometimes it happens. It's you see
Sometimes
enough shows and over long
Sometimes it
enough
happens.
years and our
But
brains,
clearly, my number one song that because it's partly because they do play it somewhat regularly, and they were supposedly, according to Jeff Harkness, they were good. They were wanted to bring back on this tour, but they couldn't get it right. Is All My Friends. I
Hmm.
love All My Friends. I love them jam. I think seeing it on YouTube when they jam out in the last like 2 minutes of that song, kind of, I love it. I love the lyrics. I love everything about that song. I hope I get to see it sometime. My number two, which I want to say, I know a lot of people, if you ask them, you know what they're going to say? They'd be like, Einstein on the Beach, because they love that song. It was one of their, I don't, that is not on my list because I don't think they'll ever play it. Then, so I don't even think about it, and they really haven't ever played it except for a couple times. But the one song they did only play for like a couple months, which would be the extra track on Films About Ghosts, She Don't Want Nobody Near. I
Hmm.
love that song. And by the way, if we've seen on the Reddit, that's kind of a fan favorite song more than I thought. People love that song, and
Yeah,
they don't play it live.
that is one, and I'm pretty sure I have not seen that one.
Okay.
Because I only saw them a couple of times in 2003. My first time I saw them was 2003. The song wasn't out yet. I saw them again in 2004, and I think they'd already dropped it. So I've never seen them play that either.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's a great tune. I'm actually curious how many times I've got the setlist.fm
yeah, check it out.
a
I
whole
know they
list.
played it. I know they played it a couple times on
8.
TV.
8
Okay,
times total.
and I think three of those were like TV appearances. So to promote the greatest hits. So it was like literally only played it
Yeah.
because they were on the Today Show or something.
Yeah, exactly. There's 3 TV shows: PBS Soundstage, the China Club in New York, which I'm pretty sure was like a record company thing, and then NBC Studios in Burbank, which I think is the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
And then during their winter run, which they used to do in San Francisco and LA, they played it 4 times, and they have
That's
not
it.
touched
So
it
yeah,
since
so you had four.
2003.
You really had four chances to see it, and so I did not. Another one that they play fairly, I don't want to say regularly, but comes up on occasion that I don't know. I want to see live is Monkey. I've never seen it live.
Hmm.
I've told you I love the fact that they reference Ben Folds, and then since then, two of the Ben Folds, band members are now on the band, and then
Hmm.
Jim actually plays an extra part. When they say Ben Folds, he bangs on the drums really hard, and he stares at Millard. I want to see that in person. That's kind of a little thing by me. One that I was wondering if you've seen, which I was trying to think, because Saturday Night, Sunday Mornings was a tour I really didn't see much, and I've only seen a couple songs, and mostly Washington Square, Michelangelo, and a little bit come around. I, I guess I'd really like to see Cowboys. I've never seen that live. I don't know if you have.
So they played that a lot when that record came out. So I definitely saw that a bunch of times because again I saw them so much in 2007, 2008.
Okay.
I probably saw them play that a lot. But yeah, that's a great song, and they I feel like they've really again they've dropped a lot of that record, and it would be nice to see some of those songs I think come back
Yes.
even occasionally, right? I mean, in terms of guitar songs, especially if you're talking about the place that Children in Bloom and sometimes we're covering the
Yeah.
Satellites or Miami plays with a guitar solo, I think you could do that with Cowboys as well, as an alternative choice to be
I mean,
the
it
the
seems
resting voice one.
my only thing about the Cowboys that yeah, well, no, you're right because it does seem like it's really hard to sing, but maybe they can do some other things to, and he could change it a little bit to save his voice a little bit. I mean, the studio version when I hear him sing that, or if you watch the video of the studio version It just when I watch it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that pained him to sing that. But so the last one on my top five of songs I never saw, which is only because I missed one of the tours, because kind of like time and time again, they played it almost every show of that tour, and the weird thing is, before this happened, I was like, they're never. And in fact, I think before this tour and after the tour, they never played it live. It literally was the one song they never played live, except for the one tour. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Why won't you come when I call?
Okay, so it's funny because the next thing we were going to talk about is songs that you wish they'd play again.
Oh,
It's
okay.
funny that we haven't discussed this. That is one of my all-time favorite songs
Oh, me too. Okay.
of theirs. I was so excited when they worked up a version of that with Augustana. I think I got to
Yes.
see them play it 3 times in a week
Okay. And
because
I did
I
not go to
saw
that
that
tour.
tour, and then on that they played it on that tour, and then it just totally disappeared. They've never gone back to it. I was actually thinking, with Dashboard's got great singers in it, right? They've
Yes.
got the two. Because I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons they did it with Augustana was that Augustana was also a really good at the time harmony band. So
Yep.
they had lots of singers, and I think they
Right.
feel like they need a lot of voices for that song, and I get it. I When I watched them with Dashboard, I was like, man, that's I thinking about it, but this would kind of a missed opportunity to not do that song with the extra singers from
Yes.
Dashboard, who would probably be awesome backup singers on Why Should You Come When I Call. But yeah, I've always loved that song. It's such an interesting and introspective. Adam has this way sometimes, that song's kind of a little bit about being a dick with
Yeah.
women, but it's
He
also about
calls it the booty call
introspectively.
song, right?
It's a
That's
booty. I
pretty
mean, it's
cool.
about booty calls, but it's also about like asking yourself so many questions about this. Like,
Yes.
why does this person come? What does that
Yeah.
say about me or about them?
Yep.
Should they be doing better? Should I be doing? Who are we both doing the right? Who knows? And asking those questions, which I think it's a very interesting perspective on something that tends to be written about, and I think in a way that's not that interesting. Um, and I think Adam's written songs about it that aren't nearly as good as that song.
Yeah, and
Um,
also as you said, great harmonies. And I was going to say something else, but I'll wait until we do the hard candy one. But I love that song, and it's funny because I could be wrong, but I think going back, 10 years ago when I was looking at songs I wanted to see live, and this was before the Augustana tour, and I think I was even writing on the message boards or something like, "Am I wrong, or did they? Is this like the one song they have never played live?" And I
Never
think they
played it.
never played it at all live at all until
Two,
Augustana, right?
2008. So at the end of the 2008 tour, which is the one where Bryson and Charlie left early, and Augustana was helping them out a lot.
Okay.
They figured out a version. They played it twice. They played it 12 times the next year
Okay.
on the traveling circus show. And again, I saw 3 of those accounts there. And then they played it one time in 2010, and that was the last time.
Yeah.
And they have
So
not played it since then. And yeah, I agree. They should absolutely bring that song
bring
back.
that back. I have a feeling that again, if people will give comments or emails, besides the Einstein, which again, a lot of people, it's not even on my list, but or because I don't think they'll ever play it, but I know a lot of people have that on their list. And the other one, which they do play on occasion, but very, 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 very rarely. And I know a lot of people, and I got to see it once, luckily. I know a lot of people want to see Up All Night. That's on a lot of
Mm.
people's white whale list. I think that because they haven't played Up All Night that much in their career. I know that he said that that's a hard one for him to sing some of the notes. I think he said that was one of the reasons he didn't have it more, even when his voice was younger, I guess.
Yeah, and that's
Do you,
another one they played a little bit more. They played that with Augustana
yeah,
in 2010 and 2008 a little bit. They played it a little. They played it in 2012 a bunch of times. They played it a few times in 2016. But otherwise, again, it's really after they played it sometimes initially 2003, 2004.
yeah, I saw it in
Um,
'08, I guess, with
yeah,
the
they played it a
maroon.
few times in 2008 too. At the I guess kind of across the tour that time.
Yeah.
And I guess
But
that
not
would
a
have been one of the
lot.
times I saw it.
For a
No,
lot
not a
of,
lot.
I mean, I guess if you, I guess the thing is with Up All Night, if you ask people their top 10 Counting Crows songs, and then match those top 10 lists with how often they play those Counting Crows songs, I think that's why Up All Night stand out. I think Up All Night is a lot of hardcore fans one of their top 10 or top 20 songs, and out of that list, their career, they haven't played it that much.
Yeah. Well, and to bring it back to that point I made earlier that about Butterfly in Reverse, right? I think Butterfly in Reverse, Why Should You Come When I Call, Up All Night, and you could even
Maybe
to an
New
extent,
Frontier.
to
Maybe New
say toss in
Frontier.
New Frontier as
Yeah.
well. There's all these songs from Hard Candy that have this, I think, unique place in their catalog. They're very um just sort of they're very different than the rest of the catalog.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of people who love some of those songs and some more than others. But I think it'd be really cool to see them work in more of those songs more regularly. Feels like a lot of times Hard Candy gets relegated to the title track, Richard Manuel, Big Yellow Taxi, Miami. And it's kind of like, well, it's a long album actually. And there's a
Yep.
lot of really good songs on there that, and I think they would all of those songs would kind of fit in the set list sort of the same way that Butterfly in Reverse does. That's why I'm sort of like you could
Yes.
almost rotate if you wanted to those. And so I think or again just decide next year you're going to play Up All Night for a year and then after that you're
Yeah.
going to play Why Should You Come When I Call for a year.
Right. Right. That's what. Yeah, I think they
Um
might do that. So yeah, it was really tough to me. I guess I'll end with for me. Although there's actually maybe five, but songs that I heard once and kind of yeah that I didn't appreciate and want to hear again. My number one is actually Hanging Tree.
hmm.
Um, yeah, we'll talk about this song when we review the video, but look at the but they have a live version that on some of the YouTube. I think it's on the Counting Crows official, but there's also the Counting Crows on the YouTube. There's also there's a certain video production company that they have like 10. Is it SKG
SBC.
SBC?
Yeah, which is
I think
who used to be like the most prolific Counting Crows taper and then now works for the band.
okay, so they have a version of Hanging Tree. It's so good. I mean, I'm blown away, and I've seen it so many times. So that and another song they just jam out, and Jim is so good in it, and Charlie's so good. I mean, yeah, Charlie. So yeah, Hanging Tree. If I had a choice of a song that I've heard once that please can you play again, it would be Hanging Tree. So
The one I have there that I've seen them do it more than a couple of times, but mostly as an alt, and only once or twice as the song itself would be "Raining in Baltimore." I love
okay,
"Raining in Baltimore." They've once or I think Bowery Ballroom. Maybe there's one other I'm forgetting, but I've seen them play the whole thing. Again, if you're sitting before Long December, if he was tapping that out, and that's another. If Charlie's going to get use out of that accordion,
yeah,
that's another good one. We got to get
right,
if he's going
that's
to get
true.
the positives of using the recording out there. Yeah, I think that's the one. That's number one on my list in terms of that. I had that, and Why Should You Come When I
Yeah,
Call.
I never saw Rating One Baltimore except for in alts or whatever. But I should know this as a podcast host. But on the August live music album, when they did
Mm,
the
yeah,
entire album again, isn't there something Raining Baltimore is an alt there? It's not by
it's around
itself,
here. It's
right?
an alt around here.
It's an alt around here. Yeah, okay, because
Yeah,
that's the one song that they actually didn't do a separate. He doesn't play that song a lot separately.
it's very very rare.
Yeah.
I'm actually trying to find the list. It's not he played it a lot in 2007.
Okay.
That was a thing. But then in 2000, we played it a few times in 2008. That's where I
Okay.
saw it a couple of times in '08. The
Okay.
last time he apparently did it by himself was 2011.
Okay.
Um,
So yeah, almost
so
like
yeah,
12. Yeah, over 10 years. So
yeah.
okay.
I will say it's interesting. I was looking as you were talking about the songs that you were what your sort of ones you want to see or haven't seen.
Yeah.
Monkey, I haven't seen since 2006.
Okay. Almost 20 years now.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I caught that uh, at Jones Beach in 2006 when they. That's another time they'd started bringing that song back and playing it. And all my friends, it had been a while for me too. I caught that one a couple times, and again the late aughts. But that's the thing; it's been 15 years,
Yeah.
for a lot of these songs. So
So team all my friends. Well, all right. Well, that's it for me. We
yeah,
talked quite a bit, and yeah. Anything else to add or?
no, I think it's been a great tour. I think I think people. I always say with this with Counting Crows, which is that anytime you think the band has kind of stagnated is kind of exactly when things are going to get interesting again. It's something about the nature of the way they play in the stasis where, they'll sometimes go through these stretches where they're playing a lot of the same stuff or playing, just kind of feeling a certain way. But you're just right around the corner from them going like, oh, we haven't played that one in a while. Screw the screw the suite. We're gonna start playing Angels of the Silences, Children in Bloom, and Ballad of El Goodo every night. And
Right. Right.
there's always it's always a ride with them and always an interesting roller coaster, and it's why it stays fun to be a fan of this band, is that it never you'll have little stretches where it's the same, but it's never too stagnant for too long, and there are always fun things coming. So excited to see what the rest of the tour brings.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And to the fans out there, I hope you also got to see them at least once and enjoyed the tour. And we'll see what happens next for our favorite band. And we'll be keeping up to date. For example, do they actually record another suite and release that anytime in the next couple of years? We'll find out. But we'll be following everything down here on Sullivan Street. Thank you so much.